This week on Supercars Talk, it's time to review the Sandown 500. Now, kicking it off this week, I was lucky enough to be invited once again by Matt Stone Racing to Sandown. I got to spend the weekend with the team. Just once again, a big shout out to them. They invited me in, and I'm just really appreciative of these opportunities. The family and friends that were there all welcomed me in, had some great chats over the weekend. Also, some fans that came up and spoke to me. Big shout out to Grant, Andrea and Shane. Great chatting with you guys over the weekend. And everyone who come and said hi, just singling out those three because we did have a really good discussion while they came and said hi. It really makes all of this kind of feel worthwhile, and it makes me feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile. But just a big shout out to MSR. Although the weekend wasn't that great in the end, I am really appreciative of you guys opening up the doors for me. Anyway, kicking off, the big news this week, Shane Van Gisbergen will be in NASCAR next year. No surprises there, but he has signed a deal with Trackhouse Racing that will see him drive in all three of the NASCAR categories, Trucks, Xfinity and the Cup Series. I don't think there's an actual plan of exactly what he will be doing next year, but one can assume he will be on the starting field for all of the street and road courses in the Cup Series, and then probably getting a lot more oval experience in the second and third tier category out there. The other big news during the week was the retro liveries. There was, of course, the Grove Racing one, which was a thing with Dementia Australia. As we know, Alan Moffat has dementia, and they picked one of his old XC Falcon, I think it was, liveries from back in the day to go with Penrite livery there. When I first looked at it, I wasn't super impressed, but it did grow on me over the weekend. It looked pretty good out on track there, and Jack Perkins was the other one running a retro livery in his Super 2 car. Flashbacks to that classic Castrol livery. There's something about that livery, I just love it. That car looked amazing all weekend. And just on liveries, once again, a shout out the Aaron Love Super 2 car. There's something about that Patronus colours that, to me, that probably the best looking car in person over the weekend. Now, before I go through all the teams and how they did over the weekend, just a quick note, I've had quite a few people message and talk to me about the time certainness of this race. Yes, okay, I think we probably should be trying to start the race a little bit earlier because there was only 2 safety car periods, but probably the big issue with the time certainness was that the race actually started about 20 minutes late due to them having to fix up the barriers from that crash that happened in the Super 2 race down the back straight. If we hadn't have had that happen, the race would have run its full course, but also when you think it was only 2 safety car periods during the race. They weren't excessively long, I didn't think. So they were probably cutting it a bit fine in those circumstances. It was something with Sandown and local government and whatnot, where the noise curfew, I think 6 o'clock. So they had to be done by 6 o'clock with the racing. Maybe aim to start the race half an hour earlier next year, just so you don't hit that kind of curfew. I know we do want to finish the race as late as possible because of TV, blah, blah, blah. But we're only on Foxtel. It's not like we're leading into the news anymore. Especially disappointing. Anyway, that's why it happened. It wasn't a TV reason this time. It was the actual Sandown curfew. But it did mean ultimately we did have a time certain race, which is always disappointing, especially in these longer endurance races. All right, so running through the teams, unsurprisingly, still in last position is Blanchard Racing. Now, 2 cars this weekend, a big step up for them. Qualifying actually went really well for Todd. He got himself into the top 10 and was 6th in the top 10 running. Apparently they've had a change in setup philosophy on that car. Obviously the right direction for qualifying, but yeah, although the 1 lap pace was there in the race, they just seemed to drop backwards. Yeah, just didn't have the pace. They ended up 17th at the end of the day. I didn't take any notes on their day, so obviously nothing went catastrophe, whatever that word. Nothing catastrophic went wrong. There we go. We got there in the end. So I'm just assuming they had lack of race pace. The sister car, Aaron Love, kept Percat from qualifying last on the grid. Yeah, so they started off last. Nothing big to report. I don't think they really did anything wrong. They just kind of lapped around all day, kept themselves out of trouble, and they finished off 24th, just 1 lap down. So a pretty impressive debut from that second car, considering. Matt Stone Racing. A weekend of unfulfilled promise from these guys. Broc made the shootout. He did end up 10th in the shootout, so a little bit disappointing there. Hill was 12th only on the grid, just missing out on the shootout. Ojeda made a poor start in the lead car. That meant that they had to double stack at the first stops, which dropped them down a bit. Because the safety car came out, so a lot of the secondary cars double stacked, which pushed them right back in the field. They switched to the alternate strategy, so they were going to stop an extra time. Then they got a mechanical black flag for flapping bodywork, which didn't help. Yeah, it wasn't a great day for them. They ultimately finished up 16th. The sister car, though, that was even worse. Very promising start. Robotham, he was going along pretty well there in the field. Got himself into a bit of a scrap with one Craig Lowndes. So you're not doing bad on your debut if you're scrapping with Craig Lowndes in a Triple Eight car. Yeah, Craig seemed to not realise he was there and just turned in. Interesting. But yeah, at the end of the day there, lap 140, they had, what was it? A damper bolt broke, which pitched Hill into the sand trap, and that ended up ending their day. And yeah, now Hill is actually last in the championship. Yeah, it's dropped them down in the team's championship, everything. Yeah, just so much promise there, unfulfilled. Yeah, they had the speed beforehand and it came to naught in the race, really. Grove Racing. Dave Reynolds had qualified the car 8th, and Garth did usual Garth things at the start of the day, and running up to 4th early on. Yeah, so if you kind of extrapolate where they were and whatever, once Reynolds got back in the car, I reckon this was probably a 5th position car for the day. I don't think they would have, you know, held off Shane Van Gisbergen coming through. It's not like Dave would have, you know, overtaken either of the Erebuses than that, but they would have been 5th at the end of the day. But a wheel fell off. So, yeah, pitched Garth into a spin there, and they were the first retirement of the race, causing that safety car. That was the wheel that also flicked over and took off the rear wing of Waters' car while Moffat was driving. Yeah, so pretty spectacular. They're saying, not our fault, it's a design error. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm sure Peter Adderton will have a lot to say about that. The second car was my surprise packet of the race. I was a little bit questionable about Kevin Estray. Not a lot of experience in these cars. You've got people that are around them and, you know, that know the Sandown circuit and that. This was also Matt Payne's debut in the main game at Sandown, or a 500k race too. Payne put the car 7th on the grid. Estray, think his start was a little bit ordinary, but he was then working his way back forward. He looked at home in the car, no issues there. They, of course, didn't have to worry about double stacking at all during the day because they were the only car left after Garth lost his wheel. They ended up finishing 6th, which kind of proves that I think Reynolds and Tander finishing 5th, definitely not unachievable for them. And this also moves Payne ahead of Reynolds in the championship, and he is a long way ahead now in the Rookie of the Year standings. Premier Racing. The Haas of Australian Supercars has once again done their anonymous tour around the tracks of Australia. Slade qualified in 11th. Pretty bloody good, and Jono Webb looked like he's been there forever, not taking any break. He just looked at home, cruising around there. Yeah, they ultimately they finished inside the top 10 with the 9th position. Golding qualified 18th. I'm sure O'Keefe was hurt, double stacking there at the start because they were the second car. Didn't see them on TV, so I can't be sure what happened there. But in the end, they moved up 3 spots and finished 15th. Yeah, just very, very anonymous weekend again from the Premier guys. They kept themselves out of trouble, I guess, because we didn't really see them on TV. Team 18. Frosty qualified the car in 13th position, and then Michael Caruso started and was the biggest winner out of the first lot of stops under the safety car there. They came out in 3rd position after the stops. Obviously, the race pace wasn't quite there because they ended up, they were the first to get a exceeding track limits penalty. It only cost them 5 seconds. That was on lap 75, so that was very early in the race. They ended up finishing 11th, while the teammate car, may as well call it a Premier car as well, because that was just a very anonymous day from Pye and Luff. They started and finished 21st. Another one I didn't really have any notes on, so that shows what they did during the day. Yeah, let's see if they can bring their mojo back to the mountain, or whether it's just another Team 18 Bathurst curse day. Walkinshaw Andretti United. Sometimes it's better not to say anything at all. Chaz qualified in 16th. Lee Holdsworth started. They had to cut the rear bar out of the car during that first stop because they've been hit in the back. Yeah, it was weird. Bruce Stewart came on the TV saying how good a job the guys had done, blah, blah, blah. But he looked like I wonder whether they would have been better off unscrewing the bar and just totally having it off, or trying to unscrewing it and screw a new one on during that safety car period. Obviously, it would have been difficult, trying not to go a lap down, but probably achievable. I'm not sure, but yeah, it seems to be a few screws on there holding it on. Yeah, maybe that would have been better, and maybe, you know, they probably wouldn't have helped because they had no under tray on the rear bumper. They ultimately finished 22nd in the race, which was 1 position ahead of Percat and Coulthard. I suppose they did move up 3 positions in the field because, yeah, they started 26th. So, yeah, not a good weekend for Walkinshaws. Tickfed. Their best car was Courtney and Zach Best. They finished 12th. Fraser and Everingham were 13th. The Great Hope that was Waters and Moffat, they started off in 3rd. They were looking pretty good at the start, running in 5th position. And freak accident, Tander loses a wheel, it takes the rear wing off the car. This was quite a funny incident. So they showed the shot of Tander sitting in the gravel trap, and of course my heart broke when I saw that. But the car was intact other than a wheel missing. There's a wing on the track that clearly has a big Castrol logo on it. Obviously nothing to do with the Penrite car. Scafie goes on about Tander losing his rear wing. something doesn't add up here. He keeps going on about it for a while. My initial thoughts were that it was Randall's rear wing. Saw a shot of Randall's car, rear wing intact. Must be the Waters car then. I'm sure that's got Castrol on the rear wing too. Sure enough then, we see Waters with no rear wing. 2 and 2 together, we know what's happened. Well, I figured that the wheel had hit the car. Yeah, then it took, not Garth Tander, it took Greg Murphy to explain it to Scaife. And then he started to get the idea of what had happened. Yeah, maybe it's time to call it a day. There was a few frustrating points like that during the day from the commentary team. There seemed to be a lot of Triple Eight love and things like that. But this was, he was too busy talking to actually pick up what was going on the screen. Anyway, end my rant about the commentary team. Yeah, Randall and Jacobson, they had their own errors during the race as well. They were the last finisher, quite a few laps down in 25th position. Yeah, Tickfed, it seemed over the weekend if they didn't have bad luck, they wouldn't have any luck at all. Dick Johnson Racing. You could call these guys Premier Racing 2, but with better results. Yeah, Anton and Tony started off in 20th position. They got an unsafe release at the first pit stop too, but they worked their way up through the field. Ultimately, they finished 8th, while the Davisons were one position better in 7th position. They started 4th, so yeah, they did drop back a bit, but ultimately very quiet race from both of those cars, but solid finish. Once again, would they be doing better like a few of the other teams with maybe a freshen up of the co-driver ranks there? Brad Jones Racing. Heimgartner and Wood did what they do best and moved up from 15th to 5th at the end, the best of the rest once again. They just stayed out of trouble all day, just plodded along, and they were there at the end in a good position. Fullwood and Fiore did a very similar thing, moving up from 25th to 14th at the end. The other two cars largely stayed out of trouble and finished in 18th and 19th position. A very quiet day for Brad Jones Racing, which is probably good for them because they seem to have a habit of trashing at least one car in these big events and then having to do a big rebuild. So yeah, heading into Bathurst, you can probably put money on it that one of them will walk away with a smoking wreck by the end of the weekend. Triple Eight. We'll kick it off with the Wildcard. After being fastest in the co-driver session, Goddard got to qualify the car and 23rd position for all his troubles. I suppose he was in front of some of the full-time drivers at least. Lowndes started the race and worked his way through the field. He did the most driving of any co-driver, but then, like, the incident with Robotham, yeah, I'm not sure. It was just a very weird, like nearly a rookie error. It'd be interesting to see how he goes at Bathurst and whether it seemed like he's now at that tipping point where, you know, maybe a 2-year contract is too much. I'll probably be proven wrong. He'll probably be one of the fastest guys at Bathurst and no issues all day. Just at Sandown, he was just starting to look that little bit rusty in the car. Yeah, but other than that, a pretty solid day from the two of them. Goddard kept himself out of trouble and they finished 10th. After Broc Feeney put the car 5th on the grid in the top 10 shootout, I was joking with one of the wags in pit lane and said, lap 5, Whincup will be in the lead. Like Nostradamus predicted it himself, lap 5, Whincup took the lead. They were never headed. I said last week these guys were probably the strongest combination out there because, yeah, you nearly can't go wrong with Whincup at Sandown. Bathurst is a different matter, and Feeney's right on top of his game this year. If they were going to qualify at the front, Whincup was going to bring the car to the front of the field, and Feeney has the pace to hold it there, and that's what they did, like clockwork. The sister car, though, made things look a lot harder. Shane qualified 19th. Very un-Shane-like. Richie did a very solid job moving the car forward, and yeah, just methodically then Shane got in and one by one started picking him off. Looked like it was going to be 4th position until Brown had his little off. 3 laps to go, and yeah, Shane took the 3rd step of the podium there. Yeah, another Sandown 500 podium for Richie Stanaway. Yeah, just really solid, and a bit ominous going into Bathurst how strong these guys were at Sandown. And finally, Erebus. A front row lockout ended up being 2nd and 4th position. Will Brown on pole with Brody in 2nd position there. Kostecki and Russell did seem to be the better combination of the two. They seem to be able to keep their tyres alive a little bit better. Not majorly different. They just seem to be a little bit stronger towards the end of the stints there. They did get hurt with having to double stack early on, but they just worked their way back through the field, getting in front ultimately, and yeah, it looked like it was going to be a 2nd and 3rd position until Will Brown had his little off with 3 laps to go. Brody now extends his championship lead. Just a really strong weekend from these guys. You do have to wonder now whether they need to look a little bit higher in the co-driver ranks to lift them, because although Russell and Perkins, extremely good job, but they weren't on the same level as Whincup or Tander, and if you're going to move to that next level and yeah, kind of fight for the championship and that every year, you probably then need to make that step up, you know, maybe look for a Scott Pye or someone like that, yeah, as a co-driver, someone who's coming off a full-time contract. So that's my Sandown review. Down in the comments, let me know what you thought of the racing over the weekend. It spread out a little bit. It probably wasn't the most edge of the seat race. After lap 5, it was like, well, these guys are probably pretty settled now in the lead here. But yeah, I mean, it kept me awake. I watched the whole way through, of course. But yeah, once again, big shout out to Matt Stone Racing. Thank you very much for having me over the weekend. I did get to interview a couple of the drivers. No guesses for which team they're from and who they are. But I will be, yeah, just a couple of short interviews. I will be releasing them in the next couple of weeks as I have time, so keep an eye out for those. But yeah, just it's exciting to have racing back, and the next one's Bathurst. So until next time, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.